Infernal blessings. Alright, back with another video. Before I begin, as I like to do at the beginning of all videos, if you are interested, get emails all the time. How do I sign up for your classes? How do I take your classes? What kind of classes you offer, etc., etc. Patreon page. That's the way to get in and get involved with the classes that I do. Okay, you can go to patreon.com/Baniti, B-A-N-I-T-I, patreon.com/Baniti, B-A-N-I-T-I, tier 3, that's the way you want to go. Tier 3 will give you access to the 3 private classes I do every month on Patreon, in addition to the group ritual we do at the end of the month, and that's for Patreon members only. If you are interested in a spiritual reading, a consultation, the type of spiritual readings I do offer are telepathic demonic readings, Santa Muerte readings, Egyptian oracle readings, shadow work readings, which again is a great place to start if you're looking for a sense of direction, where you should be headed, where you should be going. Or if you're just looking for guidance on the path and you're not sure, it's also good for if you are a newcomer, in the sense of just starting out on the path and you're looking for guidance and which route you should be going. Shadow work reading is a great place to start. Deity readings, again, as I've said in the past, which is centered around seeing which spirits and demons walk with you, not in the sense to worship them, not in the sense to be spooked out, but to strengthen your relationship with the spirits and enhance the growth on your path. All right? So you can reach out to me at khnum19@gmail.com if you are interested in a spiritual reading. Just please specify the days and times you're available and the time zone you're in. Also, I want to put out there 6th annual Journey of the Black Adept Conference. We're in full gear. We're rolling. We are now starting to sign people up and register them for the conference as we approach the month of September. So you can reach out to me if you're interested in attending in person or virtually. Shoot me an email and I will send you the information. Just specify which one that you are interested in, okay? And I will send you that information. And that'll just to put out there, I put the dates in the last video, but that will be from the 19th to the 22nd. But shoot me an email and I'll send you the information, how you sign up, the cost, the itinerary, as I've talked about in previous YouTube videos, or the last, pretty much in all the last videos for the last couple months. It's a 4-day event with a meet and greet on Thursday, classes and workshops all day Friday and Saturday. We come back on Friday and Saturday evening. We have a group ritual followed by a group dinner, some socializing, hanging out, and fun on Friday and Saturday night, and then a question and answer class noon to 4. You can attend virtually. Virtually gives you access to all the class on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday if you want to attend virtually. Anyway, shoot me an email and I'll send you over that information. Also, all the new content that I upload, and there'll be some of the older content, shorter videos that I've done in the past, but all the new content is uploaded to the Primordial Chaos podcast in audio file. So, gives you the option now to listen to it while you're driving, walking, exercising, or just doing shit around the house. You can now listen to all the new content on the Primordial Chaos podcast. The link is in the description box of the video, directly to the podcast. So what I want to talk about in this video is, let me find a section in here. Part 2 to the sex magic video. Okay? And I'm going to take something to further expound on what I was talking about in the last video. I'm going to take something from the Draconian ritual book. And I'm just going to expound on this for a little bit. Okay? It says, sex is an important part of our life, and many practitioners use the energy raised or released through sexual techniques for various magical purposes. Now, this is going to kind of be a continuation and expound further on what I was talking about last video. The view that sex serves only procreation is no longer a part of the present world outlook, and many seek pleasure for itself through a variety of practices and with the use of many props and fetishes. What made our ancestors blush is now the subjects of books, movies, talk shows, or even casual conversations. Again, as time has evolved and changed, I mean, shit, you go 15, 20 years back, like I was saying in the first video, the conversation of sex sometimes is very taboo, right? It's not talked about during, going back not too long ago. It's a bit open more now. Things have changed, but there's still kind of a disconnect there. I'm going to continue, okay? Men and women are now open for more sex experiments and magical techniques that make use of sexual energies and fluids are as common as any other ritual practices. Of course, there are still religious doctrines and magical traditions that view sexual pleasure and spiritual development as contradictory, but this view is quickly changing. On the other hand, these open attitudes also cause that sex and ritual is losing its flavor of a forbidden practice, and thus take away the power from the legendary black masses, witches' sabbats, or magical orgies, making them merely a relic of old times rather than the tool for the modern practitioner. In modern times, such rituals hardly ever have a transgressive value, although everything depends on an individual practitioner and our personal taboos and limitations, right? So again, those limitations and those taboos is going to be solely on you, right? About this, however, we will also speak further on. We have to remember that all sexual practices, whether performed alone or with a partner, release energy. Now, this is some of the key things I want to expound on a little further. The release of energy can leave us exhausted, but it can also make us creative, thus triggering our evolution. Sex is the most primal force of creation, and its potential and magical operations should never be underestimated, okay? And as I was talking in the first video, that release and exchange of energy is very powerful. As it says here, it can leave you exhausted. It could, and you find this when I was talking about the DNA in the first video and one person being stronger than the other, etc. Usually the exhausted one is probably the one that got drained more of that energy field, right? Thus triggering our evolution. Sex is the most primal force. Oh, this is where it left off. Okay. This art and science of using the power of sex for the purpose of personal growth is commonly known as sex magic. So sex magic is used in the same context that you would use any other type of ritual work, as far as your intent is for personal growth. All magical practices are inherently sexual because the universe is sexual and rests on polarities of opposite principles, male and female, yin and yang, Shakti and Shiva. And as I said before, okay, in the previous video again, okay, you're going to find that overtones and that connection to that vibrational frequency of sexual energy in a lot of this work. Even if it's a ritual that is not geared specifically or has the elements of sex magic in it. As I said, you could be doing a Lucifer working, a Bilal working, that doesn't have anything to do, directly that involves some type of sexual magic or energy. But as it says here, the universe, right, is sexual and rests on those polarities of opposite principles. The sun and the moon, so on. Magical and religious experiences are based on the mystical union of these polarities, are ecstatic and sexual in their essence. So I know people have brought this to my attention over the years in the past. They would say, it was a weird thing. I was doing a ritual. It had nothing to do with any type of sexual energy. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I tapped into this sexual energy. I started to become very aroused, or I tapped into the sexual energy on a deep visual aspect, etc. That is a very natural thing, because the reason why I wanted to draw some extracts from this section is because it's a very natural thing, because that energy as described here is something that has layers and overtones to everything in existence and creation. So this is what I was trying to probe in, and to probe deeper in this video, and what I was elaborating in the first video, that energy is very natural and it's in abundance. And it's one of the very core and fabrics of existence, creation, as it's described here in the book. These polarities that make up everything in our universe has these overtones to it. So understanding the power of sexual energy from a spiritual perspective is totally different when just connecting with the raw lust and the passion, which that's the other side of it. That's the very mundane, known side, right? We continue. Okay. The sex drive itself is the most primal impulse containing our desire of transcendence. At the moment of orgasm, our consciousness is elevated and all mental processes cease. Normal patterns of thinking are suspended and the ego and boundaries of mundane perception are dissolved, left behind by the spirit ascending to divinity. The moment contains great power and immense potential. Sex has an extremely powerful effect on the consciousness, and sexual magic is a powerful vehicle of spiritual ascent, both in the works of self-empowerment and practical sorcery. So we need to stop here for a quick minute, okay? And I'm going to run through this stuff quick, because remember, these videos are designed as just very quick tutorials, okay? So at the moment of orgasm, consciousness is elevated and all mental processes cease. That's the power of orgasm, the spiritual aspect of it. And reflect on it, obviously I can only as a man, but reflect on it from both sides of the spectrum of what happens in that moment. So everything ceases to exist. Every form of thought ceases to exist for that moment, right? Because your consciousness is elevated, right? Through a man, we know, especially in a spiritual act of sex, and or you're doing sex magic, when the orgasm is released, we know before the man ejaculates, it goes up the spine to the crown chakra, comes back down, and is released, right? The reason why the consciousness is elevated, because literally the crown chakra opens, right? And the reason why it says in here that consciousness, all other thought forms cease to exist, because in that moment, and this is why I was saying in the first video, that's why the power of charging the orgasm with the intent. If you understand that process and how it works, at that moment when the consciousness is elevated and you fuel your intent, which again, it takes discipline. I'm not saying it's always going to work on the first time, because engaging in, especially with another, now doing it soul's a little bit, when I say easier to control and discipline, because you just kind of have to worry about yourself. But when engaged with another and doing it, the timing and the discipline takes skill, practice, right? It takes, sometimes you can get it out the gate. Sometimes it takes a few times to do it. But to understand from a spiritual perspective, that's a very powerful statement, right? Think about that for a minute. All other thought forms cease to exist because the consciousness is elevated. Elevated above what? Elevated beyond person, place, and thing. You are opening up a doorway or a gateway, and opening an influx of energy and awareness to your psyche that really can't be put into words. Now just think about when you're doing it out of passion, and it could just be sex for pleasure. Think about when you're having a sexual encounter and it's really good, that buildup, right? That buildup that leads to, when it's going to culminate, that it's going to be a good orgasm, right? Just imagine, add spiritual layers to that when you're able to tap into sex magic as a magical practice. That's the best way I'm trying to use words to describe it. But that's a powerful statement, right? All right. In Latin, the left-hand path is also called via sinistra, which means sinful, adverse, or dark. Now you hear those terms, people can spook them out, right? and we don't want to get spooky with it, because anytime you hear adverse, the adversary, dark, so it's always in opposition to the norm. That it's using terminology explaining in opposition to the norm. That's it. Because this is a path of non-conformity, right? This is a path of self-mastery, self-liberation. In Hindu esotericism, the left-hand path is called Vamakara, which means the female side, and the woman is seen as the gateway to the divine. In the Draconian tradition, the sexual drive of man is expressed by the flow of the serpent force, which corresponds to Shakti and her male consort, Shiva or Lilith, Lucifer / Samael. When it is awakened, it manifests as a divine force flowing through the body, which on the physical level is often experienced in a sexual way. The flow is ecstatic, and the energy penetrates the practitioner from within, awakening desires and urges and fantasies, affecting not only the body, but also the mind, and eventually transforming into a creative drive. So, when it's talking about the sexual energy affecting the mind, we're going to run through this again. Not only the body, but also the mind. And it awakens desire. So when we use the term exploring your sexuality, it goes a little bit deeper than just curiosity for physical pleasures, but this is talking about more on a spiritual and a mental level. And again, when we're talking about earlier, again, in the first part of this, of these two videos, when we're talking about being selective of who you exchange that energy with. And this is why I wanted to do a part 2 to this, to expound further, because to me it's a practice sometimes that's talked about very loosely. And again, I'm not gonna lie, some people use it and they abuse it because they're only doing it because they got some type of personal agenda. Okay? And that's not the reasons why you should do it. Just like anything on this path, not just this. Anything on this path, you should be prepared. You should be aware. And you should have the level of knowledge when you proceed forward doing work like this, first and foremost, that you're doing it correctly for yourself. Okay? The blissful release of Kundalini is often compared to the orgasm. The more powerful it is, the greater amount of sexual energy is released. Also, the fire snake is envisioned as sleeping in the genital area, the source of sexual impulses. In Tantra, there are many techniques for awakening the Kundalini within the body of the initiate. It is imagined as rising through the spine, the central channel. Now pay attention to this as men. If you're in doing a sex magic ritual, if you, and I've done this and it's very effective and it works, if you are in the process of the act and you feel, and this is where the discipline takes, what I'm about to read here, and I usually wouldn't really get into stuff like that, I'm just going to be basic. What you want to do here is what I'm about to run through here. If you can train and discipline yourself to do this and visualize it, raising that serpent energy that's going to describe here, laying at the bottom here and bringing it up as I'm about to read in a second. If you can train and discipline yourself to do that at the moment of orgasm, you will reach the height that it's talking about here. But let me continue reading just so you know, so you understand what I'm talking about. It is imagined as rising through the spine, the central channel, along with the two other channels on the left and the right sides of the subtle body. The right nadi or pingala is masculine and represents the god Shiva in esotericism. The left channel Ida is feminine and represents his consort Shakti. In symbolic terms, the ascent and release of Kundalini occurs through the union or sacred marriage between two forces, male and female, right? So when we were talking about earlier about the infernal union of Samael and Lilith, which is same representation here, right? That is a divine representation of the harmony, or infusing harmony between the masculine and feminine energies. That's one of the most powerful ways to raise this Kundalini force. Again, with the right two individuals, though, in sound mind, sound body, sound spirit, and on a similar or same level. Okay? Let me continue. How much more we got here? I don't know if we're going to be able to get to all this. Let's see. Hi. This video might be a little bit longer than I thought. All right, let's see. For this reason, the left-hand path tantra contains many practices involving sex between participants, the purpose of which is to awaken and unite with the divine force represented by the fire snake. Okay? The dragon force within. If you have a partner who assists you in your work on a regular basis and you both know each other intimately very well, you can experiment with sex magic together. And that's another important reason. In that experimenting process, it should be with the right person. There are many exercises and rituals for couples and many books with detailed instructions on how to direct the Kundalini flow in sexual union. Most practitioners, however, find the work with their inner fire more effective if it is solitary. And solitary sex magic can be very powerful too if carried out correctly. I have met many initiates who prefer to work with sex magic alone through chosen autoerotic techniques as they have found the practice with partner too distracting. And that can be, especially if it is the wrong person. So again, further enhancing the point, it's gotta be the right fit, okay? All this depends on mutual trust and being open for each other. While sex itself is intimate and bears us before another person, combining it with our spiritual practice strips us of everything, including psychic shields and barriers, because there's such an influx of energy. You are opening yourself up. So you're not just physically bare, you are opening yourself up spiritually, okay? This is intimacy on a completely different level. While researching this subject in various books, you will meet with many different views and opinions. Some will tell you that it does not matter whether or not you are intimate with your ritual partner in your everyday life, or that it is even better if you are not, as this may only complicate the essence of the ritual. Others will claim that it is essential to know your partner's sexual needs and reactions before you step into the temple. All this is true, and it depends on a particular ritual. I think it's a combination of all that. Okay, yes, you're going to see there are various different opinions on this. Communication to me is important. I definitely think when you're carrying out sexual magic, acts of passion, you definitely should know your partner's needs. You definitely should know what stimulator turns your partner on and vice versa, right? There should be that communication. I don't think this is, in my opinion, now there could be other people beg to differ. In my opinion, I don't think that this is something that you just wing personally, okay? Draconian magic itself is very intimate in its essence, as it takes you to the very roots of your being, which often manifests through sexual metaphors and allegories. It contains many workings involving the use of sexual energy, both in solitary practice and in the rituals that require the assistance of a partner. Sexual energy is also a fuel that empowers many magical operations. Energies of draconian gods and spirits often release sexual impulses and are received by the mind of the practitioner in the form of sexual symbolism and imagery. Many draconian deities are primal, amorphous beings whose essence is too complex and too vast for the human mind to withhold. Therefore, their energy is translated by our perception through sexual metaphors. Okay? They penetrate the mind and merge with the spirit in ecstatic coitus, which feels sexual and releases a great amount of our sexual energy. Sex magic is a direct link to these primal forces and a natural way of exchange and communication. Okay? Therefore, visions of having sex with a deity during invocation or possession work is not something uncommon. And the Kundalini energy is often experienced as a sexual force as well. 100% fact. In my connection with Lilith, and I've mentioned this to you guys before, it always involves a sexual encounter. I'm not going to get into detail what happens because it's intense. But it always involves, in that ritual, on that subjective realm, it's a full-blown sex act. So it's very normal for that to happen with deity when you're doing that type of ritual. People always talk about that. a very common thing, right? Because a lot of these, especially when you're doing work with Lilith, or as I said, a lot of these deities are on this path because that energy is strong and it's there. And it's very common for that to happen. In works of evocation, draconian gods and spirits delight in sexual energy and often ask for an offering of sexual fluids. Sexual fluids are also used alongside blood and consecrate. This is something I was saying in the first video. In consecration of ritual tools, activation of seals and sigils, while the energy released through orgasm is used to empower manifestation of ritual effects. So that was some of the stuff I was saying in the first video. I just wanted to kind of build further on that. There are solitary workings. An example of such is provided in the further or later parts of this book, which are also practices you will have to do with a ritual partner. Approach them carefully, as in the state of sexual ecstasy. We are the most powerful and most vulnerable at the same time. Working with sex magic effectively requires a lot of practice, decent skills of energy control, discipline, all those things I was saying earlier, controlling the orgasm, fueling it, building it up, disciplining, timing it for your intent for release. To me, it is more complicated than discipline to practice with a partner, 100%. Solitary is a little easier because it's just you, but when there's two in that union, it's a bit more work, it's a bit more focus, it's a bit more concentration. From the philosophical perspective, the serpent force is also symbolic of the adversary who seduced the first human couple to eat of the fruits from the tree of knowledge, thus opening the way to self-gnosis and godhood. The forbidden fruit in the Western tradition is often identified with the sexual act. This is confirmed by the story that it was after the exile from the Garden of Eden that Eve gave birth to her first child, suggesting that sexual intercourse had been unknown to her and Adam before. Therefore, the serpent force lies at the roots of human sexuality. In many world mythologies, the serpent is a symbol of fertility and rejuvenation. The fertility may be understood literally, but it also stands for the creative evolutionary potential in man that drive towards self-knowledge. When the serpent offers the fruit of knowledge in Genesis, it speaks, God knows that when you eat of this tree, your eyes will be open and you will be like God, knowing good from evil. In the Draconian tradition, the serpent is identified with Lilith or Samael or Lucifer or both. In myths and legend, Lilith is the first wife of Adam. She also rebelled against God and left the Garden of Eden to settle down on the shores of the Red Sea. This is going back now to Hebrew mysticism, where she mates with demons and gives birth to hundreds of evil spirits every day. In this sense, she embodies the feminine force of the adversary. Sometimes it is believed that Lilith corresponds to Shakti in the Eastern occultism, while Shiva represents Lucifer, the light bearer. When Shakti unites with Shiva in sexual acts, Shiva's eyes open and pierces the veil of illusion. Maya, when Lilith unites with Samael, Lucifer, the eye of Lucifer opens and the illusions of the world are shattered. It's one of the greatest forms of spiritual awakening. The eye of Lucifer opens, okay? This is what the serpent's promise in the Garden of Eve stands for. The eye of Lucifer corresponds to the third eye in the subtle body of the initiate, the Andra chakra or the brow chakra, right? And as we observed in a later chapter in this book, it has profound esoteric meaning connected with the initiatory process. On the Draconian path, it is Lilith that teaches the initiate how to transform the force of sex into a tool of personal development and guides us through the realms of sexual fantasies, fears, inhibitions, lusts, and perversions. So this is why I kind of sometimes shake my head and scratch my head when people say they work with Lilith. And then sometimes when people talk about working with Lilith through sex magic and sexual energy, 9 out of 10 times, maybe less, 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 times, a lot of it is bullshit. I'm just going to keep it 100 with you, okay? Because I hear people saying a lot of the same repetitive things you see written in books, that nobody's saying anything along these lines. Because if you really, and again, Lilith is just not limited to sex work, but when you do specifically connect with her for sex work, she will open up your psyche in understanding all aspects of sex. Understanding your taboos, your desires, she will really have you, I don't want to say challenge yourself because that's a little bit different, but she will have you test those waters. Right? A lot of things you may have suppressed in your sexual energy, she will challenge it. And once that is released, the way you embrace that energy, it's hard to put into words. Right? Now you must control it and harness it, because once you taste the nectar and the ecstasy of Lilith, you're going to crave it. And more so for the man than the woman, as I said in the first video. I can attest to this. I put this very politely. You'll sometimes find there's raw moments where your sex drive is through the roof. It's something you sometimes got to get a grasp on. It's just something you just crave. And that's I don't want to say the dangers, but that's the things you need to be aware of when you connect with a deity like Lilith at that, because Lilith represents, again, she's the one that harnesses and controls that force, right? Especially when you're working with the divine masculine and feminine under any of those forms, whether it's Shakti and Shiva or Lilith Samael, which is basically the same thing, not much difference. Okay? Okay. Like the serpent force that awakens consciousness, this might go a little bit long, I'm almost done, and the slumber of ignorance, Lilith awakens the spirit from illusions of the flesh, where sexual mysticism is in the hunger for ascent and the desire to overcome our finite nature. For this reason, she is called the mother of abortions and despises the pure instinct of reproduction and the waste of sexual energies for mere survival of the species. While it is a natural thing for man to procreate in order to provide continuation of the bloodline, which is the substitute for immortality, Lilith prompts us to seek immortality itself, not through reproduction of the flesh, but through individual spiritual ascent. She transforms the biological impulse into metaphysical desire. She and Lucifer can be compared to two serpents that constitute the Kundalini concept in Tantra, the lunar and the soul currents of Ida and Pingala, uniting in the third eye, the center of awakened consciousness, where the fire snake spreads its wings and becomes the dragon. In a similar way, Lilith and Lucifer are thought to be two parts of the same cosmic force, or anti-cosmic, as their union leads to destruction of the world. Personifications of the feminine masculine currents of the dragon, the lunar and solar forces, okay, of the universe, and the existing foundations of the universe. They are the current of all creation and all destruction, ascending through the spinal column in the form of the fire snake, rising from the sexual center at the base of the spine, awakened through the rites of ecstasy and techniques of sex magic. So now you're getting a deeper understanding of the power of sex magic and what it is and how it works, and understanding the divine masculine aspect of it and the divine feminine aspect of it, and how those two aspects come together to create a divine awakening within. Notice it said when this union comes together, they destroy, it's complete destruction of this illusionary world. It removes all the illusions, misconceptions, lies and nonsense and bullshit, because your level of awakening and your level of consciousness transcends to a whole different level when this is carried out correctly. All right, and then the last section. All right, it's not going to go too much longer. All right. Sexual alchemy rests on transmutation of the physical into spiritual. It fails when we cannot transcend beyond the experience of the flesh. When erotic ecstasy remains focused in sexual organs instead of being sublimated into spiritual exaltation, it may also have a regressive character. If we get stuck in carnal lust, seeking sensual pleasure for itself, sex magic fails when this spiritual element is absent in a coitus which lovers seek pleasure for itself. So sex magic cannot just be about just pleasure only, because that'll throw the whole work off. And this is why I've said many times over the year in different videos, you have to be able to be clear and understand and how to differentiate between sex for lust and pleasure and the art of sex magic, which contains lust and pleasure, but not the only thing. Because when it becomes self-centered and only based on that, and the spiritual elements of everything we talked about here is removed from it, as it says here, it can become a waste of time. It can become exhausting and fail miserably. Okay, it fails when the spiritual element is absent, is the term used here, when it's just about pleasure for self. Okay, when they are too focused on their own enjoyment and cannot let go, refuse to open up for the other, and let their minds dissolve through the ecstasy of union. If you fail to reach contact with the intimate spiritual substance of your sexual partner, you will not experience union with the divine element either. And that's what I'm saying. When you're locked in with the right partner and you're connecting on that mental, emotional, spiritual level through sexual alchemy, that's a whole different story. So you must be focused on that and not get lost in self passion and pleasure, because it ruins it. If you so let's finish up. Okay, Draconian sexual gnosis is the mystery of erotic intoxication that removes the boundary between the body and the spirit and expands consciousness beyond the threshold of carnal perception. This is the mysticism of the flesh, which empowers, purifies, and enlightens. This is the sacred merging of the two bodies into one need, one spiritual quest, one life, one soul within the other, endless and timeless, transgressing all boundaries and all limitations. That's a lot. So to lock in with a person on that level, and picture how you got to be very disciplined when you're trying to do a ritual to ascend. When I say ascend, to astral travel, connect with the astral realm, how disciplined you have to be when it's just for yourself. Picture the union and locking of two minds and connecting on a level in your subjective consciousness, subjective universe, outside of person and place and thing, but with the union of two through this act. So now sex magic's not really what you thought it was, huh? Right? But let's continue. So then it goes on to say, to experience union with the divine element, is the mystery of erotic intoxication that removes the boundary between the body and the spirit and expands consciousness beyond the threshold of carnal perception. This is the mysticism of the flesh, which empowers, purifies, and enlightens. This is the sacred merging of two bodies into one need. This is where we left off. One spiritual club, one life, and one soul within the other. Endless and timeless, transgressing all boundaries and all limitations. At the moment of orgasm, all other activity ceases. The spirit is lifted to the heights of ecstasy. The mind is emptied of all thoughts. This is the state of non-being, nothingness. Okay? The void where everything is born and destroyed. That's why I said when the union of Lucifer and Samael come together, it represents the ultimate destruction of this illusionary world. All those mortal thoughts cease to exist. You are now in that void, that state of nothingness, where all things, that primordial chaos, where all things were birthed from. Okay? That is why it is so important in operations of magic. This is the moment when consciousness opens up to receive divine inspiration, when gods and spirits enter the body in order to speak through the mouth of the host. This state of trance can be used in rites of invocation, evocation, astral travels, channeling, divination, and many other forms of magic. Both in self-initiatory work and operations aimed at mundane and practical goals. And to finish up, sex magic can be used in both solitary practice and with a partner or even a group. I'm not even going to touch on that. That's a whole other story. That's another beast. It can involve heightened sexual activity as well as periods of celibacy. Yes, celibacy is a form of sex magic. It is a very disciplined form of sex magic. Some good celibacy sex magic rituals. You can Michael Kelly's book Apophis. He's got some workings in there. People always bring that up. Practicing periods of celibacy or semen retention or different terms we hear. Is that a magical practice and is it powerful, effective? Yes, if you understand it and how to use it. So that is also a form of sex magic. Both approaches contain great power that can be harnessed for various magical operations. It can be based on techniques of fluid retention or extensive use of bodily secretions. Okay? It can be practiced by a straight person as well as a not straight person. Young and older men and women, beginner and advanced practitioner. There are no restrictions or limitations regarding gender, age, level of personal development, or any other, as long as the work is approached with responsibility. Now, of age, right? Look, let's make this clear. We're not promoting, when it says of age, meaning between two consensual adults. Let's make that clear, okay? With responsibility, mutual consent and respect, and cautious assessment of possible health issues. I mentioned that in the first video. You don't want to do sex magic with somebody that got diseases, right? That's common sense shit, okay? Like any other Kundalini practice, sex magic may have side effects and manifest through a number of physical symptoms, like headaches, discomforts, or even pain in various parts of the body, increased heart rate, palpitation, etc. It releases very strong emotions, which may fluctuate from euphoria to severe depression or manifest in obsessions or aggressive issues. I hope you heard that. That's why it's even more critical to know who you're doing it. Okay? Therefore, it is good to know your limitations and be careful with transcending them. If for any reason you do not feel comfortable with the idea of working with your orgasm energy, sexual fluids, or transgressive operations with a magical partner, do not jump into this all at once. Approach it step by step, learn as much as you can, and then transcend your personal taboos and barriers progressively. All right? That hopefully sums up in this two-part series, gives you a better understanding of sexual energy, the elements of working with sexual energy, sexual fluids, the orgasm, the practice of sex magic, understanding the spiritual, physical effects, the exchange of energies, what it represents, the divine awakening of the transcending of your consciousness and all other thoughts cease. I mean, we can go through all of this. I wanted to do these two videos. I really planned on doing one, but I mean, I think this is good for the time being now, for the moment. I think we needed to do a follow-up because, again, I believe this is a topic that is not approached more from a spiritual perspective in detail. And I wanted to be clear on what it is, what it isn't, things you should be aware of, things you should know, and how to prepare yourself, right? Because it is a practice we do use on this path. It is a strong part of the work that we do. And then, as I said in the beginning of the video, there are strong overtones of sexual energy in everything that we do on this path, okay? And as it said, even when you deal with the polarities in the universe, right, there's overtones and layers of it in the very fabric of the universe that we live in, right? That we reside in and exist in, one of many, right? And it's always, when you go back to ancient times, even though we refer to some of the more mystical stuffs of Hebrew mysticism, you can even trace it back. It's always been a magical practice going back many years ago. It's a very powerful practice. It can be a very beneficial practice, just like anything else, as long as you're knowledgeable, you know what you're doing, especially when you're doing it with a partner. It's a bit more of a very detailed process that you need to be on top of. Okay. All right. I think that's going to wrap it up. That's good. I feel a little bit better because there was more I kind of wanted to talk about in the first video. Next video I'm probably going to do, which was supposed to be this video, Gates to the Other Side. I'll get into that tomorrow. That was going to be this one, but then as I came on, it was weird. And I'm sitting in front of my altar, and I'm sure you can see behind me there's a lot of Lilith Samael energy. And I heard both of them talking. No, we need to expound on this further. And a lot of this motivation and inspiration to do this video, even the first one, was that connection that I built with Lilith and Samael. And that destructive part, that destructive, reconstructive part of this really does come from Samael. When that eye of Lucifer or Samael opens with Lilith harnessing it and navigating it and controlling it, yeah. But I'm glad that I did a second part to this to kind of finish those things up. All right. Having said that, you know where to reach me. If you're interested in a spiritual reading, shoot me an email, khnum19@gmail.com. Also, again, the way to take my classes is go to the official Primordial Chaos Patreon page at patreon.com/Baniti, BANITI. Tier 3 is the way to go. That will give you access to the 3 private classes I do every month on Patreon for Patreon members only, and the group ritual we do together at the end of the month. Journey of the Black Adept Conference number 6. It's open. If you want to register, sign up, you want information, shoot me an email. I'll get that over to you. And remember, all this content is also being uploaded to the Primordial Chaos podcast page, which is in the description. The direct link is in the description box of this video. If you're looking for audio files of this content that you want to listen to and put your earbuds on, exercising, walking, driving, or just doing shit around the house, you now can do that with the podcast format of this new content. All right, I will see you guys on the next video. As I said, I'm going to keep this content flowing. I'm just going to keep it flowing because this is the inspiration I'm getting through my work, and I will keep that going until whenever that is. Right? So we're going to keep this flowing. Gateways to the other side, definitely I'm going to talk about in the next video. I'll post that sometime tomorrow. All right, infernal blessings to all, and we'll talk soon.